started this whole process of going through each and every party's political platform, I really tried to approach each one with an open mind. But no amount of self-preparation was going to make the Liberal Party's platform easy to go through. You see, it's 114 pages long and it runs with the tagline, "Choose Forward." One common theme I noticed in the Liberal platform was the amount of time they spend looking backwards, particularly at Stephen Harper, and then looking sideways at the Conservative Party, Andrew Scheer, and Doug Ford, all of which they mentioned 16 times throughout the platform. Another theme I noticed was the Liberals seem to have found that mythical money tree and are throwing billions and billions of dollars at anything and everything they can think of. So grab a coffee and maybe a snack and let's get started going through this massive platform from Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party of Canada. Right off the bat, the Liberals are promising to make life more affordable. Well, this whole concept is laughable and debatable because in the last 4 years of them being in power, they have done the exact opposite of that. When it comes to workers, we'll all get a new holiday with the new federal family day and a promise of a $15 an hour minimum wage. If you're feeling stressed, well, we would all have the right to disconnect and refuse to work if we're asked to. It's a good thing they're going to expand those EI benefits then. Healthcare is a very important issue for Canadians, and we all know how hard it is now to find a family doctor, so the Liberals would make more available to us. They would also take the next steps on implementing full-service pharmacare. Their next chapter is all about helping working Canadians get ahead, or as I like to call it, helping Eastern Canadians get ahead. There's not one mention of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or Alberta in this entire platform, but there sure is a lot of talk about eliminating most of our jobs. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, you will be given $50,000 to start your new business. And if you're a clean tech company and you develop zero emission technology, you can cut your corporate taxes in half. When it comes to our farmers, the Liberals would like to see Canada become the second largest exporter of food in the world. But I think in order to do that, they had better deal with China's ban on our peas, pork, and canola. For Western Canadians, we would get the Western Economic Diversification Fund to give producers an advantage in the clean economy. As for interprovincial trade, the federal government would actively assert federal jurisdiction where needed, but I think that's a bunch of hooey considering they didn't do any of that for their entire term with dealing with the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. And now we move on to Chapter 3, protecting our environment and moving our economy forward, or as I would like to call it, the Liberals' total plan to annihilate our energy sector. This section takes phasing us out one step further and shows their true agenda when it comes to our oil and gas sector. A Trudeau government would have Canada be a net zero emitter and would have legally binding 5-year milestones. They would also have even stricter rules for reducing emissions and an even bigger carbon tax. As for the hundreds and thousands of oil and gas workers, the Liberal mentality is, well, you could just go work somewhere else. Some supports would be provided, but they would have to go and look for jobs in the clean economy. The Liberals would essentially just wash their hands of us and look the other way. Any dollar earned from the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, if it ever gets operational, will be reinvested in the clean economy, as well as any profits from the sale of the project. However, let's be real here for a minute. The Liberals severely overpaid for the pipeline expansion project, so any profits will probably be pennies on the dollar. Next section is where I laughed a little bit. It reads, "We will help make energy efficient homes more affordable and help lower monthly energy bills." How is increasing a carbon tax going to help us lower our energy bills? If anything, carbon taxes don't lower bills, they just increase them. All of our homes would have to be retrofitted to be energy efficient, and all of our appliances would have to have the Energy Star certification by 2022. If you think you're going to skip out on that, well, too bad. It's mandatory. As for our Indigenous communities located in the extreme northern parts of the country, they would receive $5 billion to help them transition off of gas and diesel generated heat and power. Now, I said this about the NDP and the Greens, and I'll say it again for the Liberals. This is not practical, and it is virtually impossible. Being practical isn't something the Liberals like to practice, and being hypocritical is fairly commonplace for them. To campaign jet, Justin? And here's another level of hypocrisy. They would create a new Canadian water agency to better protect our Great Lakes, all while still allowing Quebec to dump billions of liters of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River. Now, I finally hit the halfway point in the Liberal platform, and their next chapter is called Building a Stronger Canada, and it's been met with some pretty fierce opposition, especially when it comes to their plan to ban semi-automatic weapons. Individuals who own these types of guns would have to participate in a buyback program administered by the RCMP. But when Justin Trudeau was asked to tell us the differences between the guns that he says are wrong and the ones he said are okay, he couldn't do that. Essentially, Trudeau wants to confiscate Canadians' legal property but has no clue of what that property actually is. And let's be clear, criminals do not go to the store to buy guns. They don't go get their FACs and they don't register those guns. When it comes to our national security, specifically terrorists, the Liberals would create a Director of Terrorism Prosecutions to charge those members to the fullest extent of the law, or just pay them out $10.5 million like he did with Omar Khadr. Our veterans would get a boost in mental health supports, and the most common disability claims would be fast-tracked. But while he was doling out millions of dollars to a convicted terrorist, he had taken our veterans to court over insufficient benefits they more than deserved. But Trudeau said they were asking for more than he was willing to give them. They would move forward with all the recommendations from Honourable Anne McCullen's review of the role and structure of the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. I wonder if that includes deferred prosecution agreements for Trudeau's rich friends with the clause where he can fire his Attorney General if they refuse to do so, just like he did to Jody Wilson-Raybould. But what about Canada's place in the world? Well, a Trudeau Canada would invest even more into the United Nations and would fund other countries to better prepare for climate-related disasters. Millions of our hard-earned dollars would be sent to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, education in other countries, refugee displacement camps, and they would also drastically increase Canada's immigration numbers. No, Justin, spend Canadian money on Canadians. Okay, now it's time to crunch some numbers. If you're not sitting down right now, I highly recommend you grab a seat, particularly one that you can roll into the fetal position in. So how much new spending are the Liberals promising? Are you sitting? $57 billion in the next 4 years, and that's coming in the combination of new debt and taxes. Over the next 4 years, deficits will increase by $37 billion, but they praise themselves for being fiscally responsible. It's like the Liberals think they can spend Canada into prosperity, but we all know debt collectors always get what they're owed, and the Liberals would do well to remember that. I find it truly alarming that the Liberals don't just find those levels of debt to be relatively low, but they find them to be acceptable. And I find it even more alarming that they're willing to sacrifice good Western Canadian jobs to get re-elected. And that money tree the Trudeau Liberals seem to have found has its roots embedded deep into Canadian taxpayers' pockets. Choosing forward in Liberal land seems more like taking Canada 2 giant leaps back.